Engineers from the United States, Europe, and Japan have been getting on planes and flying to China, not for trade deals, for business meetings, but to stand in front of buildings and stare. Photos of these structures look almost too extreme to be real. A lotus-shaped gold tower, a hotel carved 88 meters into an abandoned quarry, a tower with 3 enormous voids cut straight through its center. When architects and structural engineers finally see them in person, the consistent reaction is the same. The photos weren't exaggerating anything. These aren't renderings sitting on a designer's hard drive. They're open right now, with paying guests sleeping inside them tonight. Let's count down 10 of the most genuinely remarkable hotels on Earth. And along the way, separate the real engineering achievements from the details that get exaggerated or simply invented in typical viral retellings of these buildings. Before getting into the list, it's worth understanding why so many of these buildings exist in China specifically, and why so many are hotels rather than office towers or civic buildings. Hotels tied to casino resorts, theme parks, and tourism developments have unusually high tolerance for architectural risk-taking because the building itself functions as the marketing. A wildly distinctive structure generates media coverage, tourism traffic, and brand recognition in a way a conventional glass box never could. Combine that incentive with China's construction capacity. The country pours more concrete and erects more skyscrapers annually than the rest of the world combined. And you get a genuine testing ground for structural engineering ideas that would be far harder to greenlight, insure, and finance almost anywhere else. There's also a specific regional dynamic worth understanding. Macau, where several of the buildings on this list are located, operates under its own distinct competitive pressure. As a gaming and resort destination competing directly against Las Vegas for the same international tourism dollars, Macau's casino. Resort operators have long treated architecture itself as a competitive differentiator, commissioning globally recognized design firms and pursuing structurally ambitious buildings, specifically to generate the kind of media attention that translates into visitor numbers. That's part of why Macau alone accounts for a disproportionate share of the world's most photographed hotel architecture, despite being a relatively small territory. It's also worth noting up front that not every claim about these buildings that circulates online holds up under scrutiny. Several genuinely deserve the superlatives attached to them. A few details commonly repeated about them are exaggerated, misattributed, or simply incorrect, and separating those categories is exactly what we're doing here. This particular genre of content, amazing buildings, countdown videos, has become common enough across YouTube that claims tend to get copied and recirculated from one video to the next, without anyone tracing them back to a verifiable original source, which is exactly how errors like a building's height in meters getting mistaken for its number of floors can spread and persist across dozens of unrelated channels. Number 10, Morpheus Hotel, Macau. Designed by Zaha Hadid Architects and opened June 15, 2018 as part of the City of Dreams Resort, Morpheus is a 40-story, 160-meter tower with roughly 770 guest rooms, built at a reported cost of $1.1 billion. The original description described a hole ripped right through the center of the building. Singular. Morpheus actually features 3 separate voids, described by the architects as horizontal vortices cut through the structure, not one single central opening. The building's real engineering achievement is well documented and genuinely significant. It's recognized by the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat as the world's first high-rise with a free-form exoskeleton structural system, meaning the load-bearing structure is the facade itself, a lattice of diagrid steel members, rather than a conventional internal column grid. The facade uses over 1.2 million unique aluminum cladding components, and the project won the Society of Facade Engineering's International Award for Facade Engineering Excellence. It was one of Zaha Hadid's final projects before her death in 2016. Her firm completed it under partner Patrick Schumacher. It's worth explaining why an exoskeleton structure like this is genuinely difficult to engineer, beyond simply looking unconventional. In a standard tower, the building's straight, repeating vertical and horizontal steel grid can be calculated using well-established, largely standardized structural engineering formulas refined over roughly a century of skyscraper construction. Morpheus's steel members instead curve and twist irregularly through 3 dimensions, meaning each individual connection point carries a different load angle and stress profile than its neighbors. According to project engineering, firm Bureau Happold, the team had to develop custom computational modeling specifically for this project to calculate how load would travel through such an irregular lattice, since existing structural engineering software wasn't built to handle a load-bearing facade with this level of geometric irregularity. That's a genuinely rare case of a construction project requiring new engineering tools to be developed specifically to make the building possible at all, rather than simply applying existing techniques to an unusual shape. Number 9, Chimlong Spaceship Hotel, Zhuhai. Part of the Chimelong Ocean Kingdom Resort in Zhuhai, this hotel is designed to resemble a flying saucer resting on the ground, complete with round porthole-style windows and LED lighting rings around its circumference. Specific structural details about the internal support framework and the claim attributing a specific comparison to aircraft fuselage design to an unnamed Japanese aerospace engineer could not be independently verified against a named source and should be treated as unconfirmed color rather than documented fact. The genuine engineering challenge with a wide, flat disc structure is real. Large flat spans need support systems that distribute roof and floor loads across wide distances without interior columns. Interrupting guest room layouts and curved aerodynamic shapes do generally reduce wind loading compared to flat vertical facades of equivalent size. Number 8. Grand Lisboa, Macau. This lotus flower-shaped tower opened in 2007 as part of the Grand Lisboa Casino Resort. Standing at approximately 258-meter story counts for the Grand Lisboa are reported inconsistently across sources, ranging from roughly 47 to 52 floors depending on how mechanical and podium levels are counted. The commonly cited figure of 47 stories should be treated as approximate. The building's distinctive bulging, flower-like profile, wider in the middle than at its base or crown, genuinely does invert the standard. Skyscraper engineering problem, since most towers taper as they rise and concentrate load straight down through a widening base. A profile that flares outward mid-tower requires cantilevered structural elements to carry floors that extend beyond the vertical support line below them, which is a real and considerably more complex structural engineering challenge than a standard tapering tower. The building's golden, petal-like exterior panels are widely reported to number in the thousands, with each section individually angled to catch sunlight differently depending on the building's curvature at that specific point. A detail consistent with how large-scale, non-repeating facade systems are typically fabricated, requiring custom panel dimensions across most of the building's surface rather than a small number of repeated standard panel shapes. Number 7. Sunrise Kempinski Hotel, Yankee Lake, Beijing. This is where a major correction is necessary. The original description claimed this hotel consists of 8 huge spheres connected by glass walkways over water. That does not match the actual well-documented Sunrise Kempinski Hotel Beijing, which is a single semicircular structure, 97 meters tall with 21 floors and 306 rooms, designed by Shanghai Huadu Architect Design Company and completed in 2014. Its shape is meant to evoke a rising sun from the front and resembles a scallop shell from a side angle, not a cluster of connected spherical pods. The 8 connected spheres description does not correspond to any verifiable built structure at this location and appears to be either confused with a different, possibly unbuilt concept project or simply invented. What is genuinely real and impressive about this building? Its curved glass facade uses roughly 10,000 individually angled panels that reflect Yankee Lake and the surrounding Yanshan Mountains, creating a shifting mirror effect across the building's surface throughout the day. Number 6. Intercontinental Shanghai Wonderland. This is one of the most well-documented and verifiably extraordinary buildings on this list. Built into the side of an abandoned quarry roughly 30 kilometers from central Shanghai in the Songjiang district, the hotel descends approximately 88 meters, close to 289 feet, below ground level. Of its 18 total floors, 16 sit below the original ground surface, and 2 are fully submerged underwater, including an aquarium-adjacent restaurant. Designed by Atkins, the firm behind Dubai's Burj Al Arab, working with Jade Flex-QO Architects, construction took roughly a decade and cost approximately $300 million, opening to guests in December 2018. A waterfall genuinely does run down the quarry's rock face alongside the building's glass frontage, and the lowest floors do offer views into a saltwater aquarium built into the flooded base of the former quarry pit. This is a case where the real, verified facts are already remarkable enough without any embellishment. The engineering challenges here are genuinely as significant as any building on this list, and they're unusually well documented compared to some other entries. According to the project's engineers, building downward into an active quarry site required over 20 registered construction patents, specifically developed for this project, addressing problems like preventing the quarry from flooding during construction, reinforcing the surrounding rock face against landslide risk, and installing seismic monitoring systems given the site's proximity to unstable excavated rock. Because the quarry pit couldn't support conventional crane access from below, much of the heavy material handling during construction had to be lowered into the pit from above, using a reversed logistics sequence compared to typical high-rise construction, where materials are normally lifted upward floor by floor. The finished hotel has since been recognized by National Geographic's Megastructures series as one of the top 10 architectural wonders of the world, a genuine third-party recognition rather than marketing language from the hotel itself. Number 5. Sheraton Huzhou Hot Spring Resort. Commonly nicknamed the Horseshoe Hotel internationally, this ring-shaped building sits on the shore of Taihu Lake in Huzhou, China, and opened in 2013. Its arc-shaped design, with a deliberate gap at the base rather than forming a closed circle, does create the genuine structural challenge of cantilevering substantial sections of the building outward with no support directly beneath large portions of the curve, a real and well-documented engineering problem for arc-form buildings generally. At night, the building's lit curve does reflect in the lake surface below it, visually completing the ring shape. Number 4. A crystalline, angled glass hotel facade. Unverified, remove or check. The specific building referred to as Hotel Éclat, or similarly in various retellings of this list, could not be reliably matched to a single, verifiably real, publicly documented hotel project through available sourcing. Multiple hotels globally use faceted, non-repeating angled glass panel facades as a design technique, so this entry should be treated as describing a real architectural technique rather than a single confirmed building until the specific project can be verified. The underlying engineering principle, described as genuine, however, faceted, irregularly angled glass facades do require custom steel framing with unique angles at nearly every connection point, since no two panels share the same orientation. And designers do need to model sun reflection patterns across different times of day and seasons to avoid creating dangerous glare or concentrated heat reflection onto surrounding streets. A real, documented concern in glass-heavy architectural design known as death ray facade risk, which has caused genuine problems at other buildings worldwide, including one well-documented case in London. Number 3. Tianzi Hotel, Hebei Province. Another significant correction is needed here. The original description claimed this hotel stands 41 stories tall. The real Tianzi Hotel, located near Yanjiao in Sanhe, Hebei Province, is a 10-story building standing 41.6 meters tall. The 41 figure appears to have been the building's height in meters, mistakenly reported as its number of floors. Built in 2000-2001 and shaped to depict Fu, Lu, and Shou, the Chinese gods of fortune, prosperity, and longevity, the building holds a Guinness World Record for world's largest image building. Guests enter through a doorway in one figure's foot, and rooms occupy the figures' bodies up through their heads. The building has also drawn controversy. It was named among China's ugliest buildings in some architecture criticism circles, and it fell under scrutiny following a 2016 Chinese State Council directive discouraging oversized, xenocentric, weird architecture nationwide. A real policy shift worth returning to later in this video. This is a genuinely useful example of exactly the kind of error that spreads across this content genre. A single misinscription, reading 41.6 meters as 41 stories, inflates a real 10-story building into something that sounds 4 times taller than it actually is, and once that error appears in one popular video, it tends to get copied wholesale into dozens of subsequent videos covering the same list of buildings, since very few creators in this space actually verify claims against primary sources like architecture, firm press releases, building permit records, or established databases like the Council on Tall Buildings and Urban Habitat's Skyscraper Registry. Number 2, a gold lattice wrapped skyscraper. Unverified. Remove or check. The specific Wanda Rain, Wuhan, gold lattice exterior building referenced in various retellings of this list could not be independently confirmed as a real, distinctly documented structure matching this exact description through available sourcing. The underlying engineering principle is genuine and worth explaining regardless. A secondary metal lattice structure applied over a building's glass curtain wall does function simultaneously as a sun shading device, an ornamental facade layer, and in some designs, a supplementary structural element, and metal facade systems spanning the full height of a skyscraper genuinely do require carefully engineered expansion joints to accommodate thermal expansion and contraction across large temperature swings, since metal expands and contracts measurably across a building's height as seasonal and daily temperatures shift. Hilton Huzhou Fun Resort. Spherical hotel, described as the biggest spherical structure on Earth, rising directly out of a lake, could not be verified as a completed, currently operating structure matching this description through available sourcing at the time of this rewrite. It's possible this entry conflates or exaggerates a genuine concept design, a smaller completed structure, or an unrelated project. What is worth explaining honestly is why building a genuinely large sphere is such a serious engineering challenge, regardless of which specific building this description was meant to reference. Unlike a cylindrical or flat-walled structure, which curves in only one direction, a true sphere curves in every direction simultaneously, meaning every glass or cladding panel is a unique, non-repeating 3-dimensional shape requiring precision manufacturing, And any structural frame supporting a large sphere needs to distribute load across a continuously curving surface with no flat load-bearing planes to simplify the engineering. A real and significant challenge, independent of whether this specific claim structure exists exactly as described. Here's context missing from most retellings of this list. In February 2016, China's State Council issued a formal directive specifically discouraging what it termed bizarre, oversized, and xenocentric architecture nationwide. Part of a broader push under President Xi Jinping toward architecture the government considered more culturally appropriate and cost-disciplined. This wasn't a vague cultural preference. It was real state policy, and it's had genuine, documented effects on which of these building styles continue getting approved and financed for new construction. Several buildings built before 2016, including the Tianzi Hotel, have faced renewed scrutiny and in some cases reported redevelopment or demolition pressure as a direct result of this shift. Some of the most extreme designs from the 2000s and early 2010s genuinely do represent a specific architectural moment that Chinese regulatory policy has since moved to constrain, rather than an ongoing unlimited trend. It's worth being precise about what the 2016 directive actually targeted, since it's frequently oversimplified. The policy language specifically criticized buildings seen as imitating foreign landmarks without adaptation to local culture, buildings prioritizing visual novelty over practical function and cost efficiency, and oversized vanity projects commissioned by local governments primarily for prestige rather than genuine public need. It didn't outright ban distinctive architecture as a category. CCTV's famously unconventional headquarters tower in Beijing, completed in 2012, predates the policy and remains standing and in active use. And several ambitious hotel and cultural projects have continued to break ground in China well after 2016. What changed is, more specifically, a shift in which kinds of ambitious buildings get official government backing and financing, with an apparent tilt toward projects justified through genuine structural or sustainability innovation, cultural symbolism handled with more restraint, or clear commercial tourism logic, rather than architecture, pursued primarily for shock value or to outdo a neighboring city's skyline. China's extreme hotel architecture sits inside a much larger, well-documented competitive dynamic. The country has held the record for the world's most active skyscraper construction pipeline for well over a decade, and Chinese firms and developers have increasingly competed directly against long-established Western design houses like Zaha Hadid Architects and Atkins for high-profile commissions, rather than simply hiring them as outside consultants. That shift from importing foreign starchitect firms to developing substantial domestic design and engineering capability is itself part of a broader pattern in China's construction industry. One this channel and others have tracked across sectors well beyond hospitality architecture specifically. Domestic Chinese design institutes and engineering firms, including groups like Shanghai Huadu Architect Design Company, which designed the Sunrise Kempinski, and Jade Plexiguo, which co-designed the Intercontinental Quarry Hotel, now handle a meaningful share of the country's most ambitious hospitality projects independently, rather than relying primarily on foreign firms the way many of China's earliest 21st century landmark projects did. That's a genuinely significant industry shift. As recently as the 2000s, most of China's headline-grabbing architectural projects were designed by foreign starchitecture firms specifically brought in for their international prestige. The more recent generation of projects increasingly features Chinese firms either leading design work outright or serving as full engineering and construction partners, rather than simply executing a foreign firm's vision, reflecting the same broader pattern of Chinese industries moving up the value chain from execution toward original design and engineering leadership that shows up across sectors from manufacturing to technology. This competitive dynamic also plays out internationally in a more direct sense. Macau's casino resort operators compete explicitly against Las Vegas, Singapore, and increasingly destinations across Southeast Asia for the same pool of international gaming and leisure tourists, and architecture has become one of the most visible tools in that competition. A structurally unprecedented hotel tower generates exactly the kind of global media coverage that translates into visitor curiosity and brand differentiation. Coverage that a conventional, competently designed but visually unremarkable resort tower simply wouldn't generate, regardless of its amenities or service quality. Given the 2016 policy shift, the next wave of major Chinese hospitality architecture is likely to lean toward projects justified through sustainability credentials, cultural or historical symbolism framed more conservatively, and genuine structural engineering achievement, like the Intercontinental's quarry integration or Morpheus's exoskeleton, rather than the more purely novelty-driven shapes that defined the 2000s and early 2010s. Whether that shift produces Buildings as visually startling as this decade's entries remains an open question worth watching as new projects break ground. There's a related trend worth watching too: the growing emphasis on sustainability credentials as a justification for architectural ambition, rather than novelty alone. The Intercontinental Shanghai Wonderland's developers have specifically marketed the project's use of geothermal and solar energy systems and its adaptive reuse of an abandoned industrial quarry site rather than new greenfield construction as core parts of the project's value proposition alongside its visual drama. That framing, ambitious architecture justified through environmental adaptive reuse credentials rather than pure novelty, looks considerably more compatible with the post-2016 regulatory environment than a building whose primary justification is simply looking unlike anything else on Earth. Expect future headline-grabbing Chinese hospitality projects to increasingly pair genuine visual ambition with this kind of sustainability or cultural heritage framing, since that combination appears far more likely to clear both financing and regulatory hurdles than novelty pursued for its own sake. So here's the honest picture. Several of these buildings are exactly as extraordinary as the internet claims. Morpheus's exoskeleton, the Intercontinental's quarry excavation, and Sanhe's genuinely bizarre, god-shaped towers are all real, verified, and just as strange in person as in photos. A few others, including the supposed 8-sphere Sunrise Kempinski and at least 2 entries near the bottom of this specific list, appear to be exaggerated, misattributed, or simply invented somewhere along the way the story has been retold online. It's worth ending on why that distinction matters beyond simple accuracy. The genuinely verified buildings on this list represent real documented engineering achievements, years of specialized structural analysis, purpose-built computational modeling, and in some cases entirely new construction. Patents developed specifically to make a single project possible. That's a far more interesting story than the flattened, uniformly impossible framing that a lot of viral architecture content defaults to, where every building gets described with the same breathless superlatives, regardless of whether it actually represents a structural first or simply an unusual paint job on a conventional building envelope. The real engineering stories here don't need embellishment. They're already remarkable enough to earn the trip these engineers apparently made, just to see them in person. If you want more deep dives that separate genuinely verified engineering marvels from exaggerated internet claims, that's exactly what this channel does every week. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell us in the comments which of these buildings you'd actually want to spend a night in, and which claims from other viral Amazing Buildings videos you'd like us to fact check next.